The first version of the Android SDK was released in December 2011. So when I started in February, the API was about a month old. And the current release is version 1.1.1 and it was released 2 weeks ago. As everything in Android is Java-based, and the SDK comes with an Eclipse plugin with a couple of examples. Apparently the emulator is supported in the newest version. In the first version it wasn't supported, so we had to buy an Android phone to run the application. What does the API include? There are 3 main parts: adding maps and layers and interacting with them, tasks for querying information from the server, and adding graphics and all kinds of shapes to those maps. So, in my presentation I'm talking about my project and how I wrote my apps. So the first thing I want to talk about is the maps, and I got a couple of different maps. You can make parts of them invisible or visible, so that was very useful for displaying all the different floor layers. Yeah, and you can do all that stuff with this API very easily. The next step is query tasks. You use these query tasks for getting information out of the ArcGIS server. The language is SQL based, so anybody who knows how to write a statement can query this server with a graph class like this.
Is this actually exactly the same as on the other APIs?
I've never tried to do query.
So the query task looks like this. You set a geometry in the envelope in the area you want to search for this where clause. You can set the output spatial reference, as Chris said. There are a couple of those, so you should make sure that it matches your map spatial reference.
And the geometry can be an arbitrary polyline? Or is
the geometry is the envelope in which you search for your results. So you have this envelope, and every result that matches this where clause in this envelope is returned.
But it has to be a rectangle.
Yeah.
I assume that the algorithm, well, from a graphics perspective, trying to find intersections between arbitrary polygons versus a square is harder, right?
Yeah.
Because essentially, if you're looking in the a rectangle, it's just if it's bigger or smaller, and the circle is a lot more difficult.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure about that.
I earlier asked a question: can we actually look for all the points in a certain shape? And I think somebody answered yes.
I think Avi answered yes with a shapefile. Yeah. So you took a shapefile, you could query if one was inside the other.
Yeah. Was that with Esri, or was that with the toolkit?
I think it was GeoCert. Did you say that? You did.
It was actually with the database.
It's with the database. I bet you what they probably do is look up the extent of the shapefile, which is a square, and then look inside of it, and then you could probably just check all your potential results and see if they fit in more complex algorithm. Probably the straightforward.
So this is how you set up the query. The result of this query is an object with all this data, and if you set geometry, return geometry to true, you get a polygon back, which you can easily display on your map. With this, you add a graphics layer onto it, you get the graphics object out of the result, and just add it to the graphics layer, and there you go. This room was queried, and with 2 lines of code, it's getting displayed on your map. You can draw all different kinds of things onto the map. You can draw lines, polygons, circles. I think I got a picture of what you can draw on it. So, yeah, I think it's the same with every other framework. So the last part is the routing part. It's actually not based on the ArcGIS the Android SDK. The Android SDK doesn't support natively the routing tasks. The routing comes from the ArcGIS network analyst module run by the ArcGIS server, and it's used for modeling real-world networks. Its main uses are to get a route from point A to point B, or just to get the closest facilities in a certain area and draw the lines to it, the routes to it.
Oh, by the way, GeoServer or MapServer, can they do routing, or is this a feature that only ArcGIS has?
I don't think they can do that.
So, for basic knowledge, the network data set of the UFC was created by one person, and it took him over 6 months of work to get all the different paths on the campus. And it's manually created, and it's over 12,000 paths, so it's a lot of work. And it looks like this. It's a three-dimensional. The software used is ArcGIS to display these three-dimensional data sets. And
I hope it's well paid.
I actually think it was an
intern.
No, it might have actually have been an engineering master student.
I'm not sure good shape.
Which is to say,
A slave.
essentially.
By the way, that's one of the reasons why if you really want to use map data commercially, you have to pay an arm and a leg for it. It's simply really expensive to create it.
So how to access this routing data on Android? There's currently no routing task. I think in some APIs there is something like a routing task. I'm not sure about. I think in C# there's something natively where you can just add 2 points and it draws you the path on the map, but I'm not sure. The REST service, which I used for all the other features, only supports 2D routes, which isn't enough for building navigation because you have different floors. So I found a page that said that the SOAP service of the ArcGIS server can do the 3D routing, but unfortunately there is no code on the internet showing how you can do that.
Really?
So
is there code in a different language? Is SOAP supported in Java?
I found, yeah, it's supported with Java, and I finally found a C# code excerpt, but it's kind of different. So it was a lot of trial and error. How to figure, is this the right class? Is this the right feature? How do you translate, the C# thing into Java? So that was a lot of work to do.
Because of the dynamic object mapping, right?
Yeah.
It's just the idea of 3D route seems weird to me because it's just like a directed graph, right? So it's really
but you need to know.
You need to know where the elevators are to actually go up.
So it's not that simple. This is, I think this is too much, but this is how you access this SOAP service. You just set 2 points and hope that you get something back, which you can display. Yeah, this is some part of the results. Just the X, Y, and Z coordinate, which I used, and you can display it to those. Also, you can.
Do you need a specific data set before you can use the routing, or can you do this on an arbitrary map?
You have to have the paths, right?
Yeah, you need the whole network data set.
So you need a network.
This network data set the person created for 6 months. This is the basic.
What about routing on streets?
You need a network.
you need the network.
When you have a network, you can route from.
And does ESRI provide network data set, or is OpenStreetMaps, or?
There was a guy in the GIS class who took his final thing, did an analysis, a kind of grid analysis on drone driving accidents and stuff like that. So I think there are available grids. I don't know if that's what
I believe that type of thing exists. Esri has a routing service for like transportation, so they've got some routing networks built on highways, built on roadways.
But maybe
Probably
you just expose them as a service, not as the data set.
probably something you need to pay for. Also access to that, I expect.
So you actually can choose the type of the route. So you can say if you want to prefer outdoor or indoor.
It's cool, I caught it.
You would have wanted 20 bucks?
Yeah.
He put 20 bucks for his break.
Another interesting part of the ArcGIS framework is the geometry engine. You can do all sorts of geometric operations, like if a shape crosses another one, if a shape contains another one, and stuff like that. And I used it for splitting the route. So here you can't see anything of it, but I split the route on each building shape. So yeah, break down into smaller parts. And this was actually pretty easy with this geometric engine. Yeah, and yeah, the SDK is pretty new, so the community is not that big. I also looked it up on the GIS Stack Exchange, but when you type in Android and ArcGIS, I think there are only 2 hands of threads on it.
What?
So,
What do you mean there's no emulator support? This seems weird. Isn't the emulator the same thing as the phone?
no, the emulator support, it didn't work with the version 1.0. It just crashes. And it says on the homepage that it doesn't support the emulator, the ArcGIS framework.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I don't think you could write an iOS app that didn't run on simulator.
You actually can, but it's a challenge.
But it's also much easier task for Apple to make it work than for Google because of the heterogeneity of the hardware that they need to emulate.
but apparently they included the emulator support in the last version, but I hadn't.
You don't know specifically why it doesn't work, right?
It just crashes. Yeah. The online documentation is not that good. In my opinion, there are very few samples of more advanced tasks. You can get the Hello Map apps, but when you get into the advanced sections like routing and stuff like that, you're pretty much on your own.
Is the routing really related to Android? Isn't it really
No, the routing is... Yeah, but they could make it work natively on Android, so that they have just these routing tasks. But yeah. So my conclusion is it's very easy to learn the basics, but it's hard to master. Thanks.
Any questions?
What I remember about queries on WPF, I remember some of the same sorts of calls. You have to set what parameters you want to pull down, and you can filter them on WPF. I don't remember seeing an actual query function, but I may just not have seen it. And there was something else, but I forget now. Anyhow.